you were in Obama's White House. I'm not sure what you're allowed to reveal, but
no. I mean, I got great stories. They stupidly let me fly one of the F-16s. And he's like, "You want to go supersonic?" I'm like, I want to go supersonic. I start looking around, and I noticed there's a lot of dudes wearing black around me. Not in a good.
What country were you in?
I was in Indonesia. Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose my spot in the agency? So my grandpa beat up Gaddafi's bodyguards. They extradited him out of the country. They didn't have to do that with me, so I think I'm doing good, Mom.
Hi, everybody. This is Dan Indante. Welcome back to another episode of Middle-Aged Mess, the show for people who don't feel like they're alive unless they wake up with a new pain every morning. Today, we've got an interesting guest. I'm very excited. Atlas Aultman. Atlas, how you doing?
I'm good, Dan. Thanks, brother.
I often pretend like I'm a badass. Most of the time, I pretend like I'm a badass. But every once in a while, I'm faced with a person who's an actual badass, and I have to admit that, I'm not quite there yet. That is Atlas today. So if you just want to make me feel a little better and like dumb down a couple of the stories, I'm cool with that. Look, Atlas, my first question always is how'd you get here? And not, don't tell me about your plane flight, blah, 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 blah. How'd you get here to the seat right now?
I love to change lives. So I have a bunch of ways to do that. And I've put them in books and courses and all that crap. But I really love podcasts because people actually listen to these things.
Yeah.
And then they take something away. Like a lot of your podcasts I learned about.
Uh-oh. That's always the terrible stories about to start.
No. I absolutely love the diversity that you're bringing in. Like you brought in some people that amazingly are from different backgrounds, and they pull in these little nuggets that you get to use in life, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I love podcasting. So when I saw your show and then I checked it out and I was like, this guy is, I gotta be on his show.
Thank you. I'm not used to compliments. I'm not exactly sure how to take that,
whatever.
But thank you.
Yeah, I don't believe you at all.
All right, let's go back to the start.
Yeah.
The Atlas beginning. What happened?
Yeah, my dad liked women, and
let's go 9 months forward, please.
No, I'm telling you.
Okay.
So he cheated on my mom, and it's just me and my mom for a while, and then I moved in with my grandpa, and my first words were "Hup 2 3 4."
Military guy.
Yeah, he was a special operations guy.
Wait, your grandfather was special ops?
He was in the Green Berets, the whole Army. What do you want to call it? Poster child of that was my grandpa to me. Like when I was looking up to this mountain of a man, I was like, this guy, he's just like he could protect everybody.
You've got badass in your DNA.
Oh man, he was the man. We used to live out here. We used to live in Huntington Beach.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and like one day he was taking me to the store on his Harley because he was a biker.
Of course.
But yeah, he was taking me to the store and this guy cut us off. And I saw the violent side of my grandpa for the first time. Like he was really good at controlling his temper. So we pulled up next to this van and he just kicked the door in.
Oh, shit.
Just kicked it in. And I was like, dude, what just happened?
Hey, Gramps.
Yeah. And like, he's my age at the time. So like, I'm fully capable of doing whatever I need to do, but not like I'm very controlled when it comes to violence.
Right.
But he was so protective of me that the fact that someone pulled out in front of me, it turned him into a violent, like it reminisced on something that he had not been through.
You're having like little demon out flashbacks and stuff.
But back then, man, like they really had some issues, and that's
So he was Vietnam special ops.
Yeah. He did MAC VSOG. So if you're familiar with MAC VSOG, it's a Material Assistance Command in Vietnam, Special Operations Group. So there's movies that are based off of that. MAC VSOG has a lot of like history. So whenever someone says that and they know about that, they'll know the CIA connections, like the Phoenix Project came out of that. And then a lot of the things that they were asked to do during that time, this is going into military history a little bit.
Yeah, no, this is great.
Yeah, but a lot of the things that they were asked to do were first ever things. Like your special forces in the Army, they're trained to be like badasses, right?
Yeah.
They'll go in and they'll kick in doors if they need to. They'll go in and do the things that need to be done first time ever. They're very well versed at doing things for the first time, but their number one job and what I've seen them do is like teach other people, like teach other organizations, other countries, indigenous forces. That's what they're really trained to do.
So when we hear about the U.S. going into name the country and train, whether it's, African countries or European countries or Middle East, they're doing what you're talking about.
Yeah. And it was doing what my grandpa started, So all of that started with, a lot of that started with him. His whole history is based off of a special forces unit that I later got to be a part of later in my career. So building in that legacy, I absolutely loved the fact that I got to see some of the things that he did on the classified side of things because I was in the organization.
Once you got in.
Yeah.
Well, so let me ask you, so he came back to the United States at a time when people were spitting on veterans.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right?
People hated veterans.
Exactly. So did you ever have discussions with him about that? Did he talk about that feeling?
Yeah. So when he passed away, I got a call and it was from his brothers and they were like, hey, his name was the Black Rose. So they were like, hey, is this the Black Rose's kid? I'm like, no, it's just his grandkid. Like, what's up? And they're like, hey, he's gone. When do you have his bike? Come get it. I'm like, where are you?
we're in a black spot somewhere in Guantanamo.
Yeah. So, I went and got the bike and they gave me his, they showed me his room and I got to look through. And my great-grandfather was a chief, he was a captain in Boston. And I remember the badge he used to show me because my grandpa, phenomenal guy, when the Boston Strangler was going around, he actually arrested the Boston Strangler.
Your grandfather?
Yeah.
Great-grandfather?
My great-grandfather.
Arrested the Boston Strangler.
Yeah, so he has jail time. Like I took him to jail and this is what he talked about. And I took him for his last drink and wow, that was weird. Like he's just a dude, but he's really not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So his badge was something my grandpa, he loved that. He used to carry it with his service pistol. So when I went in his room, I was looking for that. I was like, where is this? That's what I want. It's gone. Not there. But my grandpa knew that I would go through his files. And he left me notes in his external hard drive. So I have the stories of his battles, the first time, he got a Purple Heart, how that happened and how he had to watch his friends and his first kill and all of that. Where his psychiatrist was actually having him put that on paper.
Wow.
And fast forward, man, let me just jump into this.
Okay, go after it. Get after it, baby.
Because this is absolutely crazy night and day. You're right. Society hated that whole element because it was brought to them in their living room and they saw things that happened in war that should stay at war. And the fact that happened enabled the training to really get better for the military. And now what was called PTSD back in the day, it's not a disorder because a lot of people that have gone through similar events, they don't have the same overhanging under just negativity that they don't know how to deal with because we were trained how to deal with a lot of it. A lot of the elite units that I go to, that's the first thing that they started telling you, let's get good on your mental health. Let's get good on your physical health. How are you doing spiritually? All of the elements that really weren't a factor when he started doing all this. You want something controversial?
Let's go.
All right, here you go. So everyone would come up to me, especially when I was in uniform, and they'd say, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you for your service. I love it. And I think we're all trained to say that.
Now.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. But whenever a service member hears that, they hear it as a canned statement. Realistically, if you want to change that, if you're watching a show and you want to change that, how you can do it next time you see somebody is say, thank you for your sacrifice. Because the sacrifices that goes in with that way of life, it's a nomadic way of life. I've never known not moving every 2 years. I've never not had boxes in my life. I've never been able to catch all my kids, whatever. And it was a choice that I made early on in life.
Right.
At 5.
Yeah.
When I wanted to be like my grandpa.
So let's go back there. So you were a military brat.
Yeah.
And so you grew up in probably everywhere, all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah. People always ask me where I'm from. And I say America.
Were you in Europe? Were you in overseas?
Yeah. So my whole life, I've been around the world a couple times. But my childhood was predominantly in America, California out here. We lived in Texas, Louisiana, Ohio, Massachusetts, New Mexico. You get used to how everyone talks, and then you try to talk like them.
Yeah.
And you see
Do you ever get used to it, though? You're never used to it as a kid, I don't think.
It builds diversity in a different way as you see people as they are. and not how you would think. The stigma is different. Like, I'm not looking at somebody and saying, like, I automatically assume because of your hair color that you're out at the beach all the time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I would if I was from certain parts of the country, but I don't do that. So it takes all that out. And like my kids, my oldest is 28 now. His name is Carter. Carter actually learned what it was like to be the minority because he was the only white kid in the Hawaiian school.
He was a Howley.
He was a Howley, yes. And so like he was picked on. We're all middle aged, right? So whenever
we're all a mess.
Yeah.
So,
whenever you get to this mess, you start really realizing the world's a big mess. It is. And then like, how do you sift through it? And for me, I've always been able to figure out how to do that with the training that I've been.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So there was the special ops time, and then you ended up in the White House for a while. So first of all, how'd you get in?
Yeah, a long process. That was a long process. So my son was a little kid. He came up to me one day and he goes, "You know what, Daddy, I'd really like it if you live with me and Mommy." Because I was going to work before.
Were you still married at the time?
Yeah, I was still married.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
So
he didn't even think you lived there anymore.
No, I was gone before he woke up, and I came back afterwards. And I was building this organization with another person and then a small team. And it was a lot of work. It was important work, but it was a lot of work. And the way of recognizing me for that work was giving me the opportunity to assess and try to go on the White House teams. So White House Military Office engages on a lot of military fronts. They handle everything from the president's dress, like how he appears on TV, his voice, and of course, Air Force One and Marine One, all that stuff.
Sure.
And then there's a military element in the Army that they call carpet that does all the driving. So you have all of these under the White House Military Office umbrella. So if you assess high in your job, they'll give you an opportunity to volunteer. Then you go through about 2 years worth of background checks.
That was an achievement to go from the service to the White House.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was still active duty, and then they taught me a lot. They taught me how to dress so that I can fit in with the political stuff. Not like this.
Okay, sorry.
That's definitely So I went through an academy. They taught me all the basics of how this was going to run, and then they gave everyone else a job, and that was kind of how that went. It was really cool to be on the sidelines of history and watch things go down.
All right, so let's start with the stories. There's got to be a bunch of stories about that. So you were in Obama's White House.
I was. So
the second half of his second term, right?
Well, the second part of his first term and the first part of his second term.
Okay.
And the first job that I think really opened me up as a person was Indonesia. I was out there doing a trip lead for a peace conference. And I showed up on what we call game day. That's the day when the president's going to show up and do his thing, right?
So I just want to get into it because this is so fascinating, interesting. So what does that mean? What do you have to go out and suss out before the president shows up?
Yeah, everyone has their own job. So Secret Service has their job. White House press. We're the only country that does press with our president. So that's always something when you go overseas. You always have that press element. So there's a lead for press. There's a lead for White House staff. So that's all the things that they're going to cover. And then there's a military lead. And then I was the military lead in a lot of cases. And that would be the person that brings everybody together, from Air Force One to helicopter movements to motorcade movements to, the communications aspects of it and all the other military aspects. So you bring it all together and you're like, this is what the schedule looks like.
So you coordinate everything.
Yeah, from the military elements. And then you work with the White House staff and the White House press.
So you had to be hearing some interesting stuff, right? I'm not sure what you're allowed to reveal, but
no, I got great stories. So the first time, I'll tell you this gross story because it's
perfect.
It's in my book too, but not like how I'm going to tell you.
Okay, let's hear it.
So I'm a spoiler alert. It's the first time I ever really cried.
Okay.
All right.
Really get the tissue over here just in case.
So we were at this conference on game day when the president was supposed to show up. And I have this little compact phone just in case, I can plug it in if he needs to make a phone call. I think he was supposed to make a phone call.
It's like a satellite phone anywhere you are in the world.
It was just like a regular phone, man. You just plug it in and blah, blah. But like my job was to make sure the phone was there that day and that everything was going to be good. And so, they stopped me at security and they're like, you can't bring that in. And I'm like, I had a little diplomatic pass, and I was like, I'm an American diplomat. I can bring this, right? They're like, no. So looking at this guy, it looks like he's wearing he's in all black, but he looks like he's in some kind of uniform that just, I don't know. I don't know this guy. So
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to bring this phone in. And he's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, it's coming in. And he's like, no, it's not. Now, here's my background. I was a bouncer in college. I'm a combatives instructor. I don't mind a fight. And I don't care about physical. I mean, I told you about my grandpa. He was like, that was, I don't care. So I'm not your normal tech guy. Whenever I'm coming at and I'm bringing in a phone, that's my job. I'm bringing in this thing. I don't care if you like it or not. He comes at me and he's like, you need something. And I was like, what do I need? He goes, you need a diplomatic note. I said, I'll get you one. So I called somebody and they gave me one. That's really hard to get, by the way. You can't just get a dip note.
Right.
So he's mad, brings me back into the back room. And I start looking around and I notice there's a lot of dudes wearing black around me. And I'm not in a good...
What country were you in?
I was in Indonesia. I put my hands up like I always do. Like if you're ever in a situation where you're going to get jumped, you immediately put your hands up. That's just what I always tell people, that because you can immediately defend yourself, but also you show that there's nothing in your hands, especially now when everything's being recorded. So I went in the guard and this guy straight up clocked me in the face. And I was trained in my academy. They're like, you can't hit anybody. And I remember that rolling through my head. Anytime you're in a combat situation, anytime you're ever stressed out to the max, there's a lot of things that happen to you. For me, things slow down. My adrenaline kicks in and I start to really process things. And even though I'm moving at a normal pace, it feels like I have really slow reactions. So I remember this guy hitting me and I remember thinking that I can't hit this guy. What am I going to do?
So what'd you do?
I pushed him off and I turned around and I got out of the room and, I got chased, but we were at a peace conference. So all the press conference folks turned their cameras towards me and kind of let me escape into a general population area. And I remember getting a call and they're like, hey, we heard you just got hit. And I'm like, yeah, I did. And they're like, yeah, well, I'll be there. I need to talk about it. I'm like, well, I'm going to need to process this. I have not been able to ever not engage in somebody that's engaged in me. So give me a minute. And they're like, you're not going to get that minute. So they showed up and I'm looking at a SEAL. He's the president's mill aide. He's wearing his trident. I'm looking at him. He's looking down at me and he's just got this disgusted face on it. You know what I mean? He's like,
totally.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, I don't know at all, but yes.
He's like, why would you
fantasies?
Why would you get hit? Why did you get hit? You know what I mean? I can just see it on his face. He's not saying anything, but he's looking at me like disgusted. And then the officer that was in charge was an Army officer. And they're like, hey, what happened? I'm like, just give me a minute. And they're like, nah, now. And so I got really mad and I started cussing. And I was like, I can't believe you guys let me walk into this by myself. I just go into that.
Yeah.
And then I stone face, I'm like, all right. And then I just processed it and I'm like scared now. I'm like, what goes on now? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose my spot in the agency? This took me a while to get, and I don't want to lose that. And then it went into I squirted one and I was like, what the hell is on my face? I was like crying.
Oh
I was like,
God.
what is that? And I remember them looking at me and then the SEAL was just like, whatever. And he left. And then I got mad again. And I was like, oh my gosh. It's not what I put in the book. I didn't tell
what happened other than you crying?
Oh, so they got the guy. He was the chief of their security element over there. Apparently, when you cross these people, they bury you. Like the guy that was local, my driver, because we're not allowed to drive over there, he was like, I ain't messing with that. They kill people. I'm like, well, I just got hit by one of them. He's like, I said, but I got a diplomatic pass, so I'm good.
Not in Indonesia, apparently.
Yeah. They pulled him over. I had a political aide come and advise me what I was supposed to say because I'm not a political guy.
Yeah, clearly.
And he's
You're
like,
a tech
hey,
guy.
Yeah, I'm technically that guy. So he comes over and he's like, hey, just accept the apology. And I was like, okay. The guy came over. He's like, hey, I'm sorry. I'm like, okay, I accept your apology. Yeah, I did exactly what I'm saying. He's like, yeah, I'm a Christian. And I'm like, oh, well, Christians don't hit people, bro.
Okay.
Yeah. And he goes, yes. So I'm sorry. And you? I go, I didn't do anything wrong. You hit me. So I accept your apology. And I walked away. And the political aide was like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And
Wow,
so
dude.
we got, everything we ever needed. That the rest of the week, they opened up doors for us they wouldn't have normally done. And we had a good conference and it was pretty productive. But all that happened without the president knowing, without the public knowing. And this is
I
why
mean, that could be a serious
it
international
would have been bad.
incident. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been bad. So my grandpa beat up Gaddafi's bodyguards. So
Of
like,
course he did.
you know what I
What
mean?
else would he do? Yeah,
I just
sure.
changed the tide in my family and bloodline. So you know what I mean? I'm just like,
Oh, shit.
they extradited him out of the country. They didn't have to do that with me. So I think I'm doing good, Mom. She would be proud if she's still alive.
Really, I think I'm attracted to Atlas slightly, just a little bit.
Yeah.
That's crazy,
But yeah,
man.
no, I mean, that was the first time I realized that I'm growing as a person. Because I don't know, man. I always revert to violence. I always have.
I mean, but you were in a role where you absolutely could not do that.
Absolutely couldn't.
I mean, you had to subjugate all of those feelings and all that warrior DNA and just chill out.
Yeah, and I was coming out of that culture too. Like we were in the special operations track. We had the Marine Corps, combatives instructor come out and teach us how to like kill people. I mean, they don't teach us that anymore. I'm not allowed to teach it. Like I'm not. I mean, it's like the whole culture was like, if you get messed with, you know what to do.
Billy, I think I'm scared of Atlas. I just changed my mind. Now that I know you can kill me in like 7 different ways, it kind of disorients me a little bit. But okay, so from the White House, then what happened?
Yeah, that was I went to the Naval War College. I wrote a piece on joint mentorship, how to build people up, because people don't care about people, man. They just care about themselves. That's just the truth, man.
Well, you tell my kids all the time, the only person who cares about me is me.
Yeah.
Maybe your mom occasionally, but sometimes. Me. That's it.
Yeah, so I went to the Naval War College. I got another master's degree in war. And then I went to command and did a stint out of Charleston.
Really?
Yeah, it was cool. I had 2 hurricanes hit us.
Wait, so when you said you went into command, what does that mean? What does command mean?
So I had command of soldiers and I didn't have any soldiers that time. I had command of sailors and airmen, and their job was to make sure that the Navy nuclear training mission continued. Army's got a logistics train that pushes things out into the ocean and back. And then the world's busiest C-17 hub, which is if you want to put lethal anywhere, you call the Air Force and they'll get you there. And that's what all came out of Charleston. Every time I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan, heck, Africa, I've been to 30 countries, most of them through a C-17. And I got to enable that through my guys. And we enabled some really good innovation while we were there. We changed a lot of things.
It's funny. I went to Charleston. I've been there a bunch of times. My uncle lives there, and I love the food.
Yeah,
that's what I get at Charleston. I get grits.
Oh my gosh,
you're like changing. You're changing the Army. I go and get brunch.
I love Charleston.
It's beautiful.
No, what we did there was we partnered with Amazon and Google. And we looked at some of their training processes, and then we took our folks through their training processes and created a pipeline, so where they could get real life training, like with what was going on instead of what they were being taught, which is amazing when you think about how fast things move, man. Doesn't matter where you're at anymore. Yeah. If you're not involving yourself in something that's innovative, you're standing on the sidelines.
Yeah, and it's the Army, the military, it's just so dependent on stuff. Supplies, ammunition, whatever else, and getting it from point A to point B is, the biggest task. So bringing in what you were bringing in, that must have been a big change even for the people you were dealing with,
Yeah, it was great. We ended up, partnering with a whole lot of things. We had 2 hurricanes hit us, like I said. That was absolutely crazy. So the first one just demolished everything, but I kept everything from the Navy nuclear mission side intact. And we were able to keep everything good to where we could manage it and know that we're all safe. You know? Because nuclear subs they're not nuclear bombs or anything.
Right, they run on nuclear power.
But they do, yeah. So that was a big deal when a hurricane's coming. And then, getting everybody out. And I had a good commander at the time that was also the same, career field as me. And he was really good in a time trial. And then we did it again the next year. It was a little easier that time. But I got some Navy and Marine Corps medals out of that, which I didn't care. But like, I was like, oh, I'm just doing my job. But everyone stayed safe. All the equipment stayed safe. And we were able to keep the mission going, which was
not
hard.
easy.
Yeah.
Was that your last military stint?
No, my last military stint was at the world's largest fighter wing at Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix.
Okay.
So I basically had the deputy mayoral duties. So we had engineers working for us. We had the girl that was running the communication shop also came out of JSOC. So that was cool. She was able to really speak our language and keep up with the pace. But we ended up doing a lot of great things. Also, award-winning organization, but yeah, they have the biggest job to train a lot of fighter pilots, and like they stupidly let me fly one of the F-16s. Still, retired.
Hold on.
Yeah.
You're flying fighter jets?
Yeah, they let me. They took me up, and they're like, "You want to fly it?" I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Go ahead." And so I got to like maneuver the jet and bring it up and down, and they're like, "Okay, that's enough." And I'm like, and they're like, "Get your hand off the stick." And I'm like, and they're like, "Right now." I'm like, "Okay." So
were you in the front seat or in the rear seat?
In the back. So the front seater is the person that does most of the flying. So that's your instructor pilot position in F-16. So yeah, he's like, "You want to go supersonic?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do. Yeah, let's go."
God, dude, that's so awesome.
But yeah, man, gratitude got me there. I got the spot. They were like, "Hey, you want to go fly?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do that. That'd be cool."
So what was just like really a day trip, or was it like some type of actual task?
It was a mission. Yeah, it was a mission. So we had somebody that was new to the range that came in. But the first mission I was in, they were training on dogfighting. So I go through all the training. You have to go through training to get in the cockpit to know what
just to get in the cockpit, not to do anything, just to sit there.
Yeah. So like for a good week, I was going through all this training, like how to get out of the training, or, all the stuff that you need to know for safety. But also, it was cool. How to breathe, how to do all that stuff, which comes back to like one of the things I always talk about is breathing. But they taught you a different principle on how to breathe whenever you're going through G's. But yeah, so the first mission was supposed to be a dogfight, and I go in and meet the pilot, my front seater guy, and he's a cool guy. And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, what time is it tomorrow?" He's like, "Oh, they posted out there." I'm like, "Looks like it's midday." And he's like, "Yeah." And he wasn't joking, man. They had a morning mission. So I showed up midday. He's coming back. He's like, "Missed you." I'm like, "Missed me? Missed me?" He's like, "Yeah, we're back." I'm like, "You are?" And the flight schedule had changed on me and they didn't tell me. So I was like, so I'm sitting there, I'm looking at my bag, right? My G suit.
You cried for the second time.
No, I didn't. I was just looking at it. I was like, well, that was cool. I got, this helmet with Atlas on it. And, I got like my G suit, which keeps all the blood in my legs. I'm like, this is cool. That was cool. And so I had my book and I was like, I'm just going to go give him my book. And I went back to his office and he was in flight scheduling. The guys that were in there were like, "Hey, sir, what happened?" And I was like, I just didn't know you guys moved my schedule. And they were like, "We got you." So they hooked me up the next day with a really kick-ass guy, man. This guy was
doing loop-de-loops and stuff.
No, he's like, "Oh, that's cool. You're going to do dogfight yesterday." He's like, "We'll do some of that." He's like, "We're going to do some dive bombing and some low levels, and we're going to do some strafing." He's like, "We're going to do everything that the F-16 does because I got to show somebody, what the range looks like because there's millions of acres out there that they fly over." And so we did everything that the jet does in one day, and I threw up.
I was going to say the G's probably killed you, man. That must have been crazy.
The one that really got me was when we were going down, and then he clicks a little button, and you drop the little ordnance, and you come back up. And when we were coming back up, I was like, well, that's not a good feeling at all. And we leveled off. He's like, "How you doing?" I was like, I'm gonna throw up. He's like, "Okay, I'll do a pattern real quick." So, I threw up. And he's like, "You good?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's go again."
Rock and roll. So do one more time.
Yeah, we did it again.
I'm cleaned out.
And then we did the dogfighting thing, and he got me again. And he's like, "You want to go supersonic?" I'm like, I want to go supersonic. So we did that. And
you threw up again?
No, I didn't. Okay. I only threw up twice.
Look at you. Yeah, you're a big boy now.
Yeah, I know. That was an exciting experience.
That had to be super cool. I can't imagine. Cool. I have a friend, my buddy, who's in the Navy down in San Diego. He took me on an aircraft carrier one time, me and my family and friends. And just even standing next to those planes is like, it's a weird feeling.
It is.
I mean, they're so unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like $500 million and it can take out like, an entire country.
Yeah.
you know?
It's legit. I mean, I'm a very proud member of the Air Force.
That's awesome.
But I never got to fly in one until then. I was always a ground pounder from.
So let's segue out of the military, and now you are doing what?
Yeah, I speak on stages predominantly. I have master classes, but predominantly this is what I like to do. I like to tell people the story and then just tell them, hey man, it's all in your head. Like seriously, people self-select them. They just self-select themselves out of a probable success all the time. And I've never done that. I mean, I've just been like, hey, I'm going to do this. And people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, I just do it.
Well, I think you've developed like a little program, a little paradigm for how you deal with decisions.
I do.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
It's all on people, man. I mean, so I started off with the 5 W's plus how, who, what, where, when, and why. And then the fancy how, And I changed the way the Air Force promotion system worked. Now it worked well.
You alphabetize it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, go.
Yeah, that's how it works. Alphabetized it. Got that list straight. And then they put me in the 4-stars office and I started looking at bigger decisions. And I saw the generals that worked for him. And then another 4-star come in and, I was printing out emails because email was new back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I got to see the decision cycle a lot closer than I think people can now. And I started looking at how he was making decisions and I found out he only focuses on 3 of those things. And that's, when can it be done? How long is it going to take? And then who can do it? And I used that model and it put me in great spots, top 40, under 40 for innovation and technology. Every command that I did won major awards. Every command that I was in won huge awards. We saved a lot of time and billions of dollars were allocated to different things that were actually needed in the government rather than things that were allocated towards me. Right. We had wicked problems and I just found wicked problems to be solved by wicked, smart people. Right. So I always look for those wicked, smart people.
Wicked smart. Wicked smart.
Wicked smart over there in Harvard Yard, go park the car.
Are you, so do you work with people? Are you consulting or what's your gig?
So I do 3 a year. I'll do 3 consulting gigs a year. Just because I like my family, man. I do. I got 5 kids at home right now.
Oh, wow.
Out of 7. So I like to drive them to school if I can. That's something I never got to do growing up in the military. We're always gone. I was always in a war zone somewhere. I was always deployed doing a presidential mission. I was never around. So I like to be around the family. So I limit myself to 3 clients, but stages, I do stages a lot, man. I'll get up and tell the story. I'll tell you how to breathe, man. I got this whole breathing method that takes away stress. It's really easy. And it's...
well, let's hear it. Come on. I'm stressed out just sitting here talking to you. Come on.
So it's called 3 breathing.
Okay.
And the commonality to that is something that they teach in shooting and a lot of different special operations goes into a box breathing paradigm. So what box breathing is you go up for 3 seconds and you breathe in. And then you hold your breath for 3 seconds. And then you let it go for 3 seconds. And then you level out. And then your body and your mind connect. Here's how to fast track that. Because you know who you are, right? What you're going to do is you're going to breathe in for as long as you want to. And then you're going to pause it. And then when you feel your mind and your body connect, your stress starts to dissipate. You become excited instead of nervous. And things can actually materialize because you're not emotionally charged anymore.
Shit, you just got better looking at me.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, too much. I love it. But yeah, the 3 breathing technique, you do that before stage, anytime you're nervous, anytime you're stressed, and you immediately can get rid of the ability to go, if you want to hurt somebody, you don't have to now.
I got you. What was your TED Talk about?
So it's start with who, and that's really how you need to do everything. So I went through the 5 W's. I went through that whole pattern, and then I went through how I did my 3 cycles and how I got a lot of success on it. But how I came to that was my call sign. So when I was in Afghanistan, the commanding general called me in his office, and he's like, "Hey, Altman, just wanted to tell you, you crushed it." I say what I always say when I hear those, right? Those words come out. I'm like, "I crushed it." Sir, I got an amazingly awesome team. They're so talented.
Thanks be to God.
Yeah. And he's like, "I agree, go tell him." So he dismissed me and I go back to the team and I was like, "Hey guys, commanding general said you crushed it." And I agree with him. And they're like, "Colonel, that's great. Come in here, we got something for you." and they open up the door to a naming ceremony. And what a naming ceremony is a very sacred event, and every one of them is different. And in the military, you can get names, and they usually come from different stories or whatever. So mine went like this: that they opened the door and they started with stories. They're like, "Hey, when you got here, sir, you told us what you're good at, what you're not good at, and you didn't lie because you didn't do anything that you're not good at. None of that came out of you." So then you figured out who we were by asking us like what we're passionate about. You started moving us around the team, and we started moving faster. And then we started going out and visiting, the Rangers and the Green Berets and the SEALs. And we were asking experts what they want to know about. And we found, really good success out of that. And you're dealing with a lot of personal things. I was going through a divorce at the time. And my renters weren't paying because of COVID. COVID was going on. They're like, you had all this on your back.
I have 4 years of my life that was exactly the same. So I'm familiar.
Yeah. They're like, you had all this on your back, man. And you put it on your back, and you carried us through this momentous time when we were getting ready to leave Afghanistan. So it's only fitting that we call you Atlas. And, nice. And like that, I don't take call signs. My community doesn't really do call signs. That's for like HUA pilots, like whatever, Viper over there, yeah, we used to make fun of that. But then I was like, guys, I'm going to use this. And what it turned into when I started really processing it was how I made decisions. And it boils down to one thing. I always look at people for who they are. I was born that way, man. I was raised that way. I look at people differently, and you can too. That's just a choice. You can take people at face value, or you can actually get down to business and talk to them, sit down, see what they're really about. When you find out who people are, what they're passionate about, you won't pigeonhole them. They won't get pigeonholed.
Yeah.
You'll fuel their passion, and they'll start moving faster, and they'll start producing better, and they just work hard because they're doing what they love to do.
Yeah, you let them unleash their power. You're
it.
giving them power as opposed to taking away by labeling them as whatever you're labeling that day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a great place to stop. Atlas, you've been super interesting. I really had a good time hanging out with you.
Oh, thanks.
You really cried twice. Let's be honest. Jesus Christ.
Cut that out, by the way.
That's fine. No, it's been great talking to you. I may be bringing you back for more.
Yeah,
I know you got a lot more stories in you.
Yeah, I do.
That's awesome. All right, everybody, that's been another episode of Middle Age Mess with Atlas Aultman. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, give me a something, send me an email, tell me I'm good looking, anything, I'll take it all. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.